What's going on, guys? Welcome back to 4K Motoring. I'm Chris, and today we're going to be talking about the Corvette. These cars are known to have electrical gremlins. There's a lot of issues with the fiberglass body. There's a lot of issues with the kind of very cutting-edge electronics that these cars had back in the late 90s, early 2000s that are now, 20 years later, causing a little bit of issues. I'm having one issue with my car right now that seems intermittent at the moment, but is increasing in frequency with the active handling system. Not really sure what the solution is yet, so let's go for a drive and see what we can do to kind of recreate the problem. Let's go ahead and start the car and see what happens. When I start the car, especially the first time of the day, everything is really pretty normal. I'm not getting any odd errors on the dash. I'm not seeing the car do anything unusual, and everything is fine. What I've noticed happen, and this happened especially while I was at VIR at the racetrack this last weekend, it was a 90+ degree day. The car was baking outside in the sun all day, and it happened consistently both days after sitting and idling for a couple minutes, you know, stuck in traffic getting out or doing kind of the fan lap, the staging area, engine running, hot weather, not really moving, just idle conditions. The first time I accelerated after being in that situation for a couple minutes, the car gave me a service active handling system, active handling error, service engine soon light, that I then was able to pull up some codes. Those codes basically listed every component of the active handling system, which, if you don't know, the C5 Corvette has a very, at least for the time, advanced system monitoring suspension angles, steering inputs, yaw, pitch, roll angles. I mean, a lot of data to take into account what the driver is trying to do and what the car is actually doing to affect independent wheel braking and traction control issues, traction control, in order to get the vehicle to act the way the driver intends it to act. And that was kind of revolutionary for Chevrolet and built upon what they still use today. But that system failed. Now, it still let me drive the car just fine. ABS itself, just standard ABS, was still on. But the fancy active handling system was off, and I couldn't put it in its competitive driving modes. So I'm taking in data, and I'm trying to just drive the car to figure out what it likes, what it doesn't like, and what I can do to recreate this problem. It's not really rearing its head on a cold car, and it really hasn't done it ever, and I haven't seen that change at all. It's still on a cold car, totally fine. I'm watching the oil temperature specifically to see if that kind of gives us a hint of the engine temperature or maybe underhood temperatures. I'm not quite sure. There's really been no changes in what I've done to the car. I know that I've seen some forums where people said the LED brake lights might cause it, or different ground points or anything like that might cause it. This is not an all the time issue. This didn't happen and right after I did the brake lights. It hasn't been happening consistently because of the brake lights. It seems to be temperature related, which makes me think probably it's something under the hood of the car, because air conditioner in the cab doesn't seem to matter, and it's really just situations that increase underhood temperature, idling in hot weather, kind of give this error. So it leads me to believe that every single sensor in the car, the off-pitch roll sensor, the, you know, under the radio, the one under the passenger seat, all the different sensors that are in this program, I think there's a brake pressure, brake reservoir pressure level sensor, something like that. I mean, it's every code for this system, which makes me think it's the unit that's processing, or the actual brake control module, the EBCM, maybe the electronics on it, not necessarily the servos, but part of that unit. That is a common failure on these cars. It really is. The 97 through 2000 year cars had a module that was not rebuildable. And that's what makes those cars kind of risky to buy, because once that fails, you have no option to replace it. And other than the dwindling supply of them out there from junkyards and stuff that are absolutely skyrocketing value because they know there's not many of them left, there's not a whole lot, you know, you can do about it. The 2001 to 2004 modules, they've revised it, and it is rebuildable. It can be sent out, and there's lots of companies that do just rebuilds on them, and they're really not that expensive. They're just the rebuilds on the electronics. You ship them a core, they ship you either yours back or a rebuilt core. Normally it's a couple solders that come loose, something like that on the board that I've heard. Those are only a couple $100, whereas a whole like rebuilt unit or new unit might be a little over $1,000. So it's not a cheap endeavor either way, but that seems to be probably the starting point we're gonna go with. I don't know what we can do to test what's going wrong. I'm imagining it's like a voltage-based issue that's not reading the sensors properly or something like that. I don't know, all at the same time. I don't know how to test for that because I don't know exactly how to reproduce it every time. So it makes it difficult to start testing things to know what it is that's failing if I don't know how to reproduce it or how to exactly recreate it. So we're just gonna drive around a little bit. My oil temp is up to 150 degrees right now, Fahrenheit, and I'm still not noticing any issues. We're gonna be sitting in traffic here just a little bit. We'll see how it climbs, and maybe something will happen. So the main module I'm talking about, this EBCM, the electronic brake control module, under the hood here, it is tucked down right here under this radiator line. You can kind of see, if this camera is adjusted, the brake lines coming out of it that have the servos that control each independent brake line. The electronics are on the center side, kind of the inboard side of that. You can see that, and that's what generally goes bad and needs to be replaced. Hopefully we can do some cleaning, maybe be able to test some wires coming out of there to see if there's an issue, if we can reproduce what's happening. It is right between the engine and the radiator, so any sort of heat related issues it's definitely going to be experiencing, which is probably the root cause for a lot of the failures it experiences. So we're going to continue troubleshooting and hopefully find an answer to this. These are these little electrical gremlins that the C5 is known for that can be an absolute pain to diagnose and deal with just because there's so many different possibilities for it. We've done pretty well so far in troubleshooting the issues we've had with the Corvette, finding exactly what fixes that we can make, and they've all been pretty simple so far. This one I think might be a little bit more complex. So we've been sitting in the sun here at a traffic light for a while. It is about 85 degrees out. It's actually a pretty nice day so far for this point of the year. Not overly hot, but it's 85 degrees here in North Carolina in the sun in early September. Our oil temperature is now up to right about 200 degrees, like 198 degrees Fahrenheit is where we're sitting right now. So what happened last couple times, what I noticed is after sitting for a while and after the car getting hot, the moment I accelerated, and it seemed to be maybe accelerating while turning, but definitely accelerating, is when the error happened. All right, and I'm not seeing an error there. It is something that's corrected every time I turn the car off and back on. So I will say that it's, I guess, a soft code or whatever. As soon as I turn the car off, it clears it out. I turn it back on, everything's fine. I do have a code reader that I keep in the car that I'm able to check codes and clear things, but I don't have to use it. I just turn the car off and it clears it just fine. So I'm not quite sure what the error is or how to basically prevent it. I haven't even found out how to cause it yet. And that's kind of my struggle at the moment. The OBD2 reader I have is the BlueDriver, and this is available on Amazon. I'll leave a link down in the description below. I like this thing a lot. It just connects to your phone via Bluetooth and allows you to pull all the codes, look at live viewing of different sensor readouts and that sort of thing. So really a pretty powerful thing, more than a lot of the big handheld self-contained units. It does require you to have a cell phone that's connected to it, but that makes it pretty, universal as far as what vehicles it'll work on. I'll leave a list of all the codes that I'm receiving down in the description below. If you guys have any idea what could be causing all these at once, or if you guys have experienced this and replaced anything, I'd love to know what worked for you or what you found. Like I said, I'm guessing it's the brake control module under the hood that the electronics have having an issue. Something's either while getting really hot, expanding, not making contact, throwing a voltage that's not quite right, something like that, I'm imagining is what the problem is. If you found it something else, I'd love to hear about it, and love to hear whatever electronic issues you've had. So far, we've replaced the alternator twice in this car because of the issues, and the battery, to try and solve some of the voltage things, because these cars are very sensitive and they have an electronics package that is not very accommodating of different voltages or any sort of anomalies. That's all I have for you today. Just wanted to make a short video chronicling this issue as it starts to become a problem. It's only happened in the last month or so, is when it reared head really at VIR this last weekend. So only about 2 weeks I've been experiencing this issue. It hasn't really been a problem ever before. So I'm hoping it's something intermittent that we can kind of clear up, but I'm thinking just from the age of the car and how much we're driving it, it's probably a sign of something that's going to be failing coming up. So stay tuned, we'll work through it and replace it in future videos. I just want to make this one to show kind of what's going on with the car right now, just to share my experience and see if you guys have any solutions to it or have experienced it before. As always, if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe to be notified of the future content. Hopefully we find a fix for this. Stay tuned, we'll be back. I'm Chris, this is 4K Motoring. We'll see you next time.